Want to welcome everybody back to the second episode of the Black Top 5 podcast. Before we start this episode off, I want to start it with a quote from Dr. John Henry Clark. He said, "For a people to be truly independent, they must have an independent educational system. If they are dependent on another people's educational system, then they are dependent on another people's information." He followed up by saying the role of education is to teach the student to be a proper handler of power. With that being said, I want to introduce our next guest, Miss Cheryl Irvin, the founder of the new Alkebulan STEM Academy of Lauderhill, Florida. Welcome, sister.
Thank you.
How you doing?
I'm good. I'm really happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Listen, the pleasure is all mine. You're the founder of the new Alkebulan STEM Academy. But before we talk about the school, I wanted to know a little bit about you. Where are you from?
I was born in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. People ask me where I'm from all the time, especially from Florida. You rarely get people who are from Florida. Right. You get New Yorkers, you get Caribbeans, and I'm often mistaken for a Caribbean person. But I'm not. I'm Southern.
Right.
My family's from Georgia.
Okay.
In the Macon area, and we are American Africans.
There you go.
Yes.
Yeah, I was wondering because, the location of your school is down there in South Florida. So I was wondering, is she from there?
I am.
What? So before you opened the school, what was your background before you started your school?
I have been a teacher since 1996, but I never had the intention of just being a teacher. Mm-hmm. I went to college, and let me stop and back up just a minute. There's no such thing as just a teacher, because that is a noble profession. Let me just say that. That's not what I meant. What I meant was I went into the teaching profession with the intention of opening a school. That was always the intention.
Okay. So
right?
You always had a fascination for education.
It's fascination isn't the word. It's really I was told to do it.
Really?
I was told to do it. Okay. So I tell this story. I'll tell it again to your audience. I was in college. I was a pre-law student, and I was intending to be an attorney. I had classes and 2.5 years into pre-law, and I was going to focus on family law. So the family and children, that has always been my focus. But I was going to do it through law. I was that Perry Mason baby who I watched Perry Mason. I'm aging myself right now. But yeah, I was going to be a lawyer. I was on the debate team all throughout my primary schooling. I was training myself to be a lawyer, being on debate and writing, speaking, all of it. So when I got to college, that's what I was doing, pre-law. And I got a call from my mother saying that one of my cousins gotten arrested. It floored me because people thought I was gifted, but I thought he was gifted. Mm-hmm. He had an entirely different set of gifts, however. This is a young man who, he was younger than me, but I treated him a lot like my little brother. And he would sit behind the piano player in church at like 5, 6, 7 years old and just watch his hands. And my grandfather built the church, like physically. He was a brick mason. He built the church that we went to. So we were there all the time. So he would sit behind the piano and just watch his hands. And then when everybody left and we had to, clean up and do everything in the church because it was our church, he would sit at the piano and pick out everything that he had just seen the piano player do. He learned piano that way, guitar, any instrument that was played in the church, he watched it, he learned it. Brilliant. Perfect pitch. It was crazy. I thought he was brilliant. And so when I got the call to say that he was arrested and he was probably going to be charged as an adult and spend a lot of time in prison. I was floored. I'm walking across the thoroughfare at college, going to my classes, and I am crying. I am bawling. I am talking out loud. And I'm like, oh my God, what am I going to do? I'm here studying to be a lawyer, and he should be here. He should be here. What am I going to do for a child as a lawyer? If a child needs a lawyer, you've entered their life too late.
Right.
That's what I was saying. I'm saying this out loud. If a child needs a lawyer, I'm too late, God. If a child needs a lawyer, I'm too late. What am I going to do? And I'm talking out loud and I'm crying and my face is all messed up. I didn't care who was watching me. I did not care. What I felt, the experience that I had in that moment was a person, it felt like a man, come right here to my face when I said, what am I going to do? And he said, you're going to build a school. I turned to my right to see who was talking to me, and there was nobody there. So I come from praying grandmothers.
Right.
If you know what that means.
Yeah.
I took that very seriously. I took that very literally. I did not go to class. I went to the registrar's office and I changed my major to education that moment.
Okay. That kind of moved me, and it's throwing me off my next question. I'm trying to retain it. But it sounds like you almost had some type of divine intervention.
It was absolutely that.
Yeah.
And it wasn't the first time in my life. I had those experiences,
Right.
And spells and experiences all throughout my life. And so I take them very seriously. And like I said, I didn't go to class. I went to the registrar's office, changed my major, and then the 2 years that I had left, I got a master's degree in education.
To me, what I've noticed is the most spiritual being, in my estimation, on the planet Earth is the African woman. And it seems so fitting and natural for you as an African woman to take on an endeavor like starting a school. You know, I had a praying grandmother, God rest her soul. But we grew up in the church, and she used to teach us different things about church. And I said, Mama Ruby, how do you become a pastor? She said, you have to be called. And just listening to you, it seems like you were convicted in a spiritual moment to become a purveyor of information for our Black children. So my question was, where did your motivation come from? But I see kind of where it did come from. So let me ask you, what maintains the drive that you have for educating our children? And before that, I want to ask, what kept you to task to build the school first and foremost? And then I want to know about what maintains and upkeeps your drive to do that.
So in 1996, when I graduated college, I didn't go out and just build a school. It didn't happen like that. I didn't know how to do it. Okay. I was 20 years old because I had graduated early. I always took advantage of dual enrollment programs. Okay. I was one of the first set of students in my city to even experience what is now very common in terms of dual enrollment, where you leave high school after 10th grade and you go to college. So before I graduated high school, I had a college degree. And then when I went to college, before I got my BA and I walked for that, 2 days before was my walk for my master's.
Wow.
Because I did a dual enrollment in college. Okay. And then I got into another dual enrollment program after that at New York with a PhD and a JD. So I always did dual enrollment, right? But when I got out of school, I didn't know how to build anything. Did you see all the letters I named?
Right.
And even getting them out of order and even getting them in this gifted way, I still didn't know how to build anything.
Easy to build anyway.
I had no idea how to build a school. I had no idea how to build anything.
Right.
And so I said, the plan that I made was I'm going to teach in every space, in every educational space, that could be a potential model for excellence for African children. And when I made that choice, I knew my resume was going to look like cheddar cheese, Swiss cheese. I'm sorry. I knew it. I was like, oh my God, people gonna look at my resume. They're gonna see me bouncing around. They're gonna think I just can't be stable and stick with something. It wasn't that. I was intentional. So every year from 1996 to when I opened my first school in 2013, I taught at a different school system. First, it was public school systems. MacArthur High School in Hollywood, Florida. Shout out to MacArthur High School. I was an economics teacher there. Then I went into the charter school system. One of the first charter school that was opened in South Florida. Jeb Bush was there for the grand opening. I was there standing right next to him because I wanted to know what charter was about. Right. They're free schools. And I found a free school in Albany, New York. Wrote to them, asked, I see your model. Can I come there? I'll teach for free. Went, taught at a free school in Albany. Marcus Klein in Chicago, who I think has the best, hands down, of any model for academic acceleration of our children in Chicago. I saw his on YouTube, asked if I could come there, told him I would teach there for free. The only thing that I asked for was that he allow my son to enroll in the school, because I took it was me and my son.
Right.
So I took him everywhere. So once a year, every year, I never left in the middle of a year. I would never do that to the children. But every type of model that you can think of, I would find a school and I would teach there for a year. I would find a school and I would teach there for a year. And sometimes for free. One of my charter schools, they said they didn't need a teacher. I said, well, I have an economics curriculum that has been funded by Robert Kiyosaki. And whatever he gives me for funding, I will give the school 10%. I will teach the course for free. And you can have an economics and business elective that you don't right now have on your curriculum, because I had already read their curriculum offering. So you don't have that as an offering. And so they're like, who is this person? Right. You've written a curriculum. You're going to get the money. You're going to give us 10% of the money and you're going to do it for free? And they told me yes, almost on a dare, like, she not going to do that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I did it. Robert Kiyosaki gave me books for every child in the class. Games, his board game cost $250 at the time for every child in the class. And almost $50,000 on top of that, of which I gave the school their 10% and I paid my own salary. So my intention, I didn't know how to do it. So I said, let me go to all of these spaces that teach children, see what they have, and see what works for Black children. And once I have that model that I think could really work for us, then I'll start.
What I'm hearing in you describing that part of your journey, I'm hearing just screaming in my head, intentional preparation.
Absolutely.
And to intentionally prepare like that means you have a degree of discipline that probably can't be taught, that has to be convicted inside of you to do that. And your aspiration for experience in these different areas of education just further complements that. So one thing about that is I think about, I have my own children, and I really want Black boys and Black girls to understand that success in this world requires discipline and requires you to have foresight. You had a lot of foresight, to have your mind made up so early and see it through. That requires a lot of foresight. Just the combination of all those elements is just phenomenal. But I want to switch gears. I want to know, what impact does the actual continent of Africa have on your vision for your students at New Akibulon?
It's like home. The Black child and the Black child and all of us, some of us, I'm not going to say all of us because not all of us have the same experience, right? But there are a lot of us who feel like the stepchild and like, where's my home? And that could have come a little bit from my own personal experience too, because I was a stepchild, you know, and I didn't always feel at home where I was. This is kind of an analogy, right? Didn't always feel at home where I was. And a lot of us feel like that in the United States. Like, this is supposed to be home, but mom and dad ain't treat me the same as they treat them over there.
Right.
So where is my home? And so Africa is that for me. Africa is that for us. Africa is that for us. That it is our roots. It is the answer to a lot of the questions that we have. When I mentioned earlier that I'm often mistaken for a Caribbean person, I spent all of my high school years, and they were abbreviated, mind you, but all 2 years that I did spend in high school, I spent them pretending to be Jamaican. No, seriously, look. I got so good at it. I only had Jamaican boyfriends. I only had Caribbean girlfriends. We went out to the little hole in the walls where you know, like the spots where you dance and drink and don't tell my mom. But but I got so good at pretending to be Jamaican that people thought I was. The guys that I dated didn't know that I wasn't. And it was because I felt at that age that they had a culture and I didn't. It was very clear to me why I was doing it. They had a language. They had their own food. They had their own way of being. But mostly there was a staunch pride in it. Like, this is me. This is who I am. I love this. I love this place. This is home. I didn't know I had that as an American African child. I know that now. I know we have our own food. I know we have our own ways of being and moving and seeing things and doing things in the world. I know that now. But as a child, I didn't know that. I felt like we had nothing. And the things that we did have were negative.
Right.
So I separated myself from those things. And I pretended to be something else. And it was only when I left home, I went to California, I went to college. Now I'm in a PWI, I'm a predominantly white institution. And I got to juxtapose myself and my culture against something else. It's like, no, I am different. And I do have a culture. So seeing where my roots were and starting to learn at that point what Africa was in that, it got me to stop faking.
Yeah. I know you were eating good though.
Oh yeah.
Pretend to be Jamaican. I'm telling you, this I hope the camera don't see it, but this how I got this right here. Because I've been pretending to be Jamaican too when I go to the restaurant. So I feel you. So let me ask you this, because a lot of our viewers, some of my viewers are younger, and some just don't know. Alkebulan.
Yes.
Alkebulan.
Yes.
Explain really quickly, what does the name Alkebulan mean?
So the word Alkebulan is an indigenous word for the continent of Africa. It just means the continent of Africa. Specifically, it means mother of mankind, land of the spirit people. And this is what our ancestors, some of them, called the continent of Africa. It was also called Ethiopia. It was also called Kemet. All things that mean mother, all things that mean black, all things that mean rich, and cradle of civilization. All of that is in that name. Some people say that it's Arabic. Some people say that it is a mother tongue of an African nation. But it's one of the indigenous words that our people use for the continent. So when we were looking at creating a new Africa within us, that's what we called our school.
I
New
love
Orleans.
that. I love that. Creating a new Africa. I love that. That's powerful. All right. I think we both agree to an extent that reading is fundamental.
Absolutely.
I want to read a statistic to you. According to the Correctional Education Association, the illiteracy for adult inmates is estimated at 75%. The National Adult Literacy Survey reports that 70% of all incarcerated adults cannot read at a fourth grade level. There are many Black children across this country who are not on their grade reading level. How does New Alkebulan address that and correct that?
So I'm going to say something really simple, right? That a lot of parents don't seem to get, and a lot of students don't seem to get. That the best way to learn to read is to read. It's real simple. The best way to learn to read is to read. And a lot of them are just not reading,
Right.
especially now when they have devices, when they have the television, when they have games. You ask your child, please ask your child, what's the last book that you read in school? What's the last novel that you read cover to cover? We're not reading. And in terms of how do we get children to read, we read with them all the time. And we have the ones that who are behind, we task them with car work, because the time in your car is, you have a captive audience. They're in the back seat. They're not going anywhere. And you're going to be in the car for at least 10, 15 minutes, right? Put a holder on the back of your chair that holds, different things, books and different things, and put a book in there and have them read out loud to you as you're driving. For 15 minutes to school, 15 minutes home. You go into the grocery store, have them read. So that's one. That's just the foundation. The best way to learn to read is to read. Because if you take those same statistics and you look at those prisoners who have the lowest recidivism rates, you will, and then you compare that to their level of learning in terms of literacy while they were incarcerated, you'll see that those who have the lowest recidivism rates are the ones who learned to read and who did read while they were incarcerated, right? Just like Malcolm's,
Right.
okay? So was there a teacher in there teaching them to read? Was there someone giving them assignments and A's and B's if they did it or they didn't? They just read. And they might not have been good at it to start, but they kept doing it, right? And so then also one of the things that parents and teachers need to know is that your child must have a phonics-based foundation.
Okay.
Must have a phonics-based foundation. Everything that we do with regards to reading is phonics-based, right? So if your child, we have a new student who came this year, brilliant. He's 4, just turned 5. And I can take flashcards and just flash them down like this. And he's reading them, boom, 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 at the same pace that I'm putting them down, 4 or 5 years old, right? But now I put a piece of paper in front of him. And I tell him to write, my name is John Doe. His name is not John Doe. This is every morning, my name is John Doe. It's not just his dexterity that's the problem. He can't sound out the word my, but if I flash it in front of him, he can read it. Someone taught him to read with sight words.
Oh, okay.
And he's a visual learner. So he can remember what it looks like. He can remember what the shapes look like. But what happens when you get a word that you're unfamiliar with? What happens when you get multisyllabic words? Words that have more than one syllable. How do you break down syllables? Nobody taught him that. What do the letter sounds say? No one taught him that. So now it's almost like he can read brilliantly, but he can't read at all. all at the same time. And it's because he's been taught using sight words. When you're teaching a child to read, they absolutely must have a phonics-based education with the English language. And they have to be taught the rules of sound, and they have to be taught the exceptions to those rules. And then they have to be taught how to break a word down into syllables, right? In the English language, like every syllable, like if you say sofa, I don't have my children clap, I have them counting. Sofa, 2 syllables, right?
Right.
Every syllable has a vowel. Every syllable has a vowel in the English language. And sometimes that Y will act as a vowel, sometimes Y, right? But every syllable has a vowel. And you can break down the word by stopping at the vowel. Only if there's a double consonant. If there's a double consonant, then you put one consonant on this side and you want to put one consonant on that side. That's how you know how to break up the syllables and how to break up the sounds and now how to read the word.
Right. And,
I'm sorry, I just got real teachery.
Nah, and that kind of led me to this question. Well, this statement. My mother, she always talks about how a good or bad teacher can really impact a child,
Yes.
their future, and their education. And so, just listening to you talk and just watching your passion for explaining the phonics and the syllables and counting and just your strategy and how you implement it shows your eagerness to educate our children. So I want to ask this. At New Alkebulan, what are the qualifications for teachers who want to teach there?
So the qualifications for teachers who want to teach at New Alkebulan is that they are proficient at their craft and they are cleared to work with children, right? Let me explain the proficient to work with their craft. That does not mean that you have a certification from the state of Florida, because you don't need to be proficient to get a certification from the state of Florida. You need a bachelor's degree. And I would say 50%, I'm gonna be generous and say 50% of the teachers who teach, I'm just gonna say my state, got there by way of being trained to teach. The others simply have bachelor's degrees that they use to get a temporary teaching certificate, because you can have a bachelor's degree. Say you were going to be an engineer. You apply for different companies in your field. You don't quite have an engineering job yet. You can take that BA in engineering, send it into the state of Florida. They'll give you a temporary teaching certificate to teach in the state of Florida for 3 to 5 years.
Okay.
Now you can teach science. Now you can teach any range of subjects in the school that fits your degree. As an engineer, you may have been going through classes to learn engineering, but you may not have been going through classes to learn how to work with children. You may not have been going through classes to learn how to disseminate information. My son is brilliant, but he can't teach it to you.
Right. I got.
He's an engineering student. He's also a marketing student. And he's brilliant, but he can't teach it to you.
Right.
I have him come in and try to tutor the children sometimes. He's like, Mom, they won't listen. And I'm like, well, you're not explaining to them in a way that they can understand. And he's like, but I get it. I how do you do that? So let's say 50% of the teachers have been trained, have been taught to teach. And 50% of the teachers have not been taught to teach, but they simply have the degree. So we don't go just based off of degree.
Okay.
Right? We go based off of proficiency in your subject. And then if you weren't taught to teach, I can teach you how to teach. And that's one of the things that I do with our teachers who are there.
Okay.
So our history teacher never taught a day in his life. He actually came to our school to give a lecture on Haitian history. And he was being interviewed afterwards, and they asked him, have you ever been a teacher? And he said, no, I don't really have the credentials to be a teacher. And he said, but you've taught about, the history of Africa, the history of Haiti. Like you traveling, you do. And I'm thinking proficiency in your subject area, right? So then after his interview, I approached him and I said, I can teach you how to teach. I can't teach you how to be proficient as you are, but I can teach you how to teach children. So if you want to do that, I would love for you to join us. And he did. And he was one of the best history teachers that I had. The other history teacher prior to him, again, absolutely loved African history, loved African people. Works for Florida Power and Light. He's the guy, he's an engineer who comes out and fixes the panels.
Right.
Amazing history teacher. Because the level of proficiency for his information, you can't buy it. You can't teach it, right? But I can teach you to teach.
Mm-hmm.
So proficiency and a love of African children, and a willingness to learn to teach them.
That's important. The having that willingness to learn, even as a teacher, I think separates the good from the great. You know what I'm saying? So
our science teacher is a professional African drummer.
Okay.
Brilliant in math and science. Knows the connection between rhythm and music and math and science, and can teach that to children. You don't learn that in University of Colorado science class. You just don't. But I can teach you to teach our children. So he comes in and he starts teaching them that connection between rhythm and sound and math and science. And he's teaching them what that does in terms of plants and how chlorophyll and melanin and like he's bringing something that that you don't get in your science classes, right? So I absolutely love that we are willing to work with the brilliance in our community, and it doesn't have to look like BAs, MAs. And now, don't get me wrong, like I have all the letters and they have all the letters. They're just brilliant in their own ways, and they come with their own proficiencies.
So when you evaluate on your own, when you evaluate their proficiency in your way, like, are you doing this by observing them, or is it some type of formal way that they demonstrate it? How do you evaluate the proficiency?
So we definitely sit down. We have interviews. There are pre-interviews where they send their information. I research them. We look them up. I have had people who just have degrees and they have their teaching certificate come in and they're, okay, I can teach math. Okay. So I give them not only the math, but then I give them some of the elements, the African elements that we usually pair with that math.
Yes.
Some of them can't do the math, first of all. But then when we are pairing the other, and I'm going to explain our curriculum model, but when we pair those other elements with it, they're like, I don't get what that has to do with that.
Mm-hmm.
Like that part of it, whether it's math or science or that part of it, it's a disconnect. All they know how to do is their particular subject, which is not what I'm looking for.
Right.
So in the model that I settled on, not settled on, in the model that I created out of all of the experiences with the various schooling models, whether it's free school, charter school, private school, Montessori, project-based learning. So we have an African Center project-based school. And we start with the project build. And we take that build and we see all of the subjects that relate to that build. So for instance, if the children are building boats and they physically have built boats that we took to a river and had a race down river in their boats that they built with their hands, right? And you can see videos of that on our YouTube channel, right? So if the project build is building boats, that project now has the subject areas around it. In science, they're learning about physics and buoyancy and at every level, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they're learning the science that relates to boating. But in history, they're learning they're learning about traversing and how our people have traversed the world in boats. And not just slave ships.
Mm-hmm.
There were boats prior to slave ships, people. We built boats prior to slave ships. So they're learning about all of the ways that they traversed the world using boats. They learned about the Ebo landing. They learned about all of the times that people resisted on those boats, right? And mathematics, same with mathematics, they start learning geometry and at every level, right? So I give them a project idea and I give them the parameters for it. And I say, what would be the math for this project? What would be the history for this project? What would be the science for this project? Because one of the things, the reason why I did it like that and I interconnected all of the subjects to what the children are making is because I never wanted the children in our school to say, why am I learning this? When am I ever going to use this? The answer is at 2:00.
Right.
when we pick the tools up and you start building the car or you start building the boats, at 2:00.
Right. Right. So I got a question. So, because you kind of led me to this, I was going to ask this later, but hearing how you interconnect the subject matter to them as African people,
Absolutely.
what does having a knowledge of self mean for the Black student?
Everything. The first thing in our first week of school, we don't have academic classes. We have acculturation, right? And one of the first things we have them read is Yurugu by Marimba Ani.
Right.
And as you know, you cannot read Yurugu by Marimba Ani in a week.
Right.
You can't do it. But we have changed certain elements of it into a children's book. I take our scholars books if they're too dense for the children to read, and I turn them into picture books and children's books. So one of them is Yurugu, and what we have found is imperative, and you can do this with the Yurugu book. You can do this with teaching at home. It is not only imperative to teach your child who they are, it is also imperative to teach them who they're not. So teaching them who they are gives them something to move towards. Teaching them who they're not gives them that behavior element that to control their behavior and teaches them what to move away from.
Right.
So if you have both of those working at the same time, now you can chart a path that you want them to go in, and they'll actually start moving in that direction. So in the book Yurugu, they learn about this character and who he is and how he is, and we do projects around that. And so they learn that they're not Yurugu. They are not Yurugu. So when they start behaving a certain way in the space, they tell each other, that's Yurugu behavior. That is Yurugu behavior. Why are you doing that? That's not very African of you. Right? So in teaching them, we have to learn what it means, the best of what it means to be African.
Yes.
In order to teach it to our children.
Right. Just hearing you talk about Yurugu, that book in particular with our children, the level of preparedness that you were giving them is unquantified, you know? And that leads me to this question. I'm all out of order because you got my brain working. I want to give you this quote by Dr. Amos Wilson. He has said one time that the purpose of education is to ensure the survival of the race. So I want to ask you, going back to this Yurugu, how does New Akibulon produce the type of students that we need to solve the problems of Black people in America and around the world, like Dr. Wilson said, to ensure our survival?
The motto of our school is creating creators. We hear all the time, and a lot of us say all the time, we need our own banks.
Right. Yeah.
We need our own grocery stores. Yeah. We need our own fill in the blank. Go on ahead.
Hospital.
We need our own hospital.
Yeah.
We need our own, and we can keep going, right? And Dr. John Henry Clark said we don't even make our own underwear.
Right.
If the Asians stop making underwear tomorrow, y'all will be out. So in looking at what model is going to fulfill on what our ancestors have done, because they charted out what there is for us to do and what it is for us to teach. That was that generation's mission and goal. It's all laid out. We don't have to write any more books on what should we teach our children. They've laid it all out, right? So now what it is for us to do is to fulfill on that, right? So in looking at them saying, we need to now create people who create things. Mm-hmm. That's our model, creating creators, right? But I asked myself in coming up with a model, at what point, and I'm going to ask you, at what point in your education were you ever taught to build anything? Anything.
You talking to me?
You.
Oh.
Elementary through college. When did you build something? Substantial. Not a tri-board. No, not the 3-sided board. I'm not talking about that. When did you build something that functions?
I wasn't. I was taught to participate, develop a skill set, go get you a job, those type of things. But there was nothing about my education, and I think I can speak for my peers, that nurtured the mindset to build, to anything that was self-determining or doing for self. I can't say that it was. Now, I will say this. I give a lot of credit to my mother. My mother, I'm her baby. You know what I'm saying? So,
right.
and she wants her baby, okay. She would kind of allude to certain things, but at the end of the day, she was like, well, look, you got to have a plan B to fall back on in case X, Y, and Z don't work. But still, going outside, to answer your question, nothing facilitated that mode of thought to build.
So we're telling our children that. We need to build our own this. We're telling ourselves that. We're on the internet going back and forth about that. Mm-hmm. And I had all the letters. AA, BA, MA, JD, PhD. Right. I'm going through the system for all the letters. And it was the year that I realized in my JD, PhD, a dual enrollment program, and the year that I realized that, like, I asked myself, what part of this, because here's the mission. You've been given the mission. You're going to build a school. What part of this is helping you do it? And when I couldn't answer the question, I stopped out of my program. And I started doing, right? So that's what our children do on a daily basis. In the morning from 8:30 to 12:30, they have academic classes, and all of those academic classes are related to the project build. And in the afternoon from about 1:30 to 4:30, they're physically working on building, either planning the build or building. Currently, our project for this semester is called Home is Where the Heart Is. Mm-hmm. And we're having a 20-foot shipping container delivered to the back of our school, and they're turning that shipping container into a tiny house. Oh, okay. And so they're studying all things home, right? So the project is about home. So they're building physically a home, and they're looking at Africa as home. Why is that home? Because a lot of them have not been taught that. And so they ask the questions. I've never been there. Africa's not my home. Like we have those right. discussions. So that's history, psychology, math. They're doing their base level math, but also geometry. So when it comes to actually doing the flooring, they can lay the flooring. We are creating creators. And what you said was creating the mindset to build something. This is not a vocational school. Because a lot of people like, oh, we need to bring vocations back into the school. And I'm not against that. Mm-hmm. I'm not against that. Yeah. But I think there's a precursor to that. And the precursor to that is establishing a place in the mind that knows that you are a creator, mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. that you should create, and that you must create in service of your people.
Right, right.
If you don't lay that foundation, you're going to have children who may go to college and learn how to build something, but you will never see them again.
Right, right.
You won't know what they're building because they won't be doing it for us.
Right, that's right. That's true. That's the key part, doing it for your people. And as you know, I've written several books, children's books on Garvey,
yes,
Malcolm.
We have all of them in our school.
You sure do. You sure do. And one of the things when I go and visit schools, I have parallel conversations with them about their belonging to Africa and reassociating. When one analogy I use is, how many of y'all been to the zoo? Everybody raise their hand. I say, you see the lion? They say, yes. I say, where's the lion from? They say, Africa. I said, now, wait a minute. The lion's here in Atlanta. It's still from Africa? And some of them get perplexed. Then some of them like, yeah, he's still from Africa. I'm like, it's the same for you. We in Atlanta, but we African people, and that's still ours. And everything about us is consistent with that place. So that was something. So
Yes.
I think our enemies are very sophisticated.
Very.
And they understand that, like that last question I was just talking about, knowledge itself, they understand that they must remove certain elements of what we call public education, in particular history, from curriculum, so that there won't be a mindset that's created that not only is self-determining, but rebellious. In Florida,
Yes.
Raw's governor
Yes.
has removed Black history from the curriculum, if I'm saying that right.
There was an AP African American history course that he removed from being a certified AP course within the system curriculum offering.
Okay.
Because it was deemed to be based in critical race theory,
Right.
right? So it's not that they removed African history or Black history from the curriculum. The problem is it was never really fully there. If we're talking about teaching Marimba Ani and Urugu and teaching you who you are and who you're not, that was never in the school system.
Right.
If we're talking about teaching Dr. Amos Wilson and teaching the psychology of the Black child and the psychology of Black people, that was never in the school system. If we're I can keep going, but I don't. That was never there, right? So the base level information that they receive with the Martin Luther King and the Harriet Tubman, and it was all of the people who have been gentrified. A lot of our leaders have been gentrified.
Yeah.
We have a gentrified history.
Yeah.
We don't only have gentrified neighborhoods. We have a gentrified history, right? So the information that had been given in the schools was already gentrified. We didn't live there no more.
Yeah.
We didn't live there anymore. Those neighborhoods had been taken over by white people a long time ago.
Right. Right.
And so to reduce that even more is egregious. It's egregious. And that's the thing that parents need to understand. If your children are in public schools, their education on who they are, who they're not, what their history is and what their history is not, has to be supplemented outside of the public school system, whether that was yesterday or whether that was 30, 40 years ago when I was in. It was never there. I told you, I pretended to be someone else.
Right.
Because it was never there. Because when you are getting your history, the only slaves that have been given permission to have been proud to be in that position are the ones in the Bible. And we're taught that they didn't look like us, which is a lie.
Yeah.
But we won't go into that because I don't want your podcast to get shut down.
Nah, I feel you. Speaking of Black history, I learned a little bit of Black history. Like I said, I was researching, and you had made a post about wokeness. And you actually spoke about the origins of wokeness. So, of course, in today's media,
right,
the white liberal is
gentrified. The term woke.
Gentrified the term.
Yes.
They've taken it and they call, they have these different terms, woke policy. And it's so funny because it seemed like it happened overnight. Because I remember when I heard something, I'm like, wait a minute, I thought that was ours. You know what I'm saying?
It used to be.
Yeah.
It used to be.
Yeah, the way they were using, I'm like, wait a minute, that ain't how you. But
exactly.
Anyway, so, but you were talking about how the origins actually began with Black people going all the way back to the 30s.
Yes.
So, what I want to know is, from your standpoint, how did that terminology of woke get into the hands of the white liberal, and what should our Black youth understand about the term woke, colloquially speaking?
Okay, so there is a term called a tipping point, that once you get to a certain level, and it doesn't have to be a 50-50 or equal. It just needs to be certain people. I'm trying to think of the author of the book Tipping Point. It's a book called Tipping Point, and he tells how to turn something that is just an idea into something that is viral. And it seems to happen like that. But it happens with certain types of people in certain different areas. It's a whole science to creating the viral in a social context, not and also online as well. There's a science to that. But what happens is you take something that's a trend socially, and then overnight it can become bigger. And I think what happens with us and our what could be movements, they start out, and before they can reach that tipping point, that's when the gentrification of the concept happens, so that it doesn't become more widespread among the vast majority of the people. So starting in the 30s, and then when you're having your H-Rap Browns and you're having people who are saying, wake up to where you are, the system that you live in. And it wasn't about entitlement. It really is about empowerment. What we need to do for ourselves in order to be fully who we are, and to not be who we're not. Like it's that matrix type of woke, right? Where, oh wow, we're being used for our energy. This isn't really even, this is an illusion. It's that type of wokeness, right? And before those things can hit a tipping point, you have to redefine that term. This is the thing about power, right? That definition of power. You have to redefine those terms so that it won't reach a tipping point and start to become viral, if you will.
Right. Right.
And I think that's what happened with the term woke.
Yeah.
Right.
That sounds about right.
Yeah.
Like that's what happened with it. Because like I said, I hear it, and even the Republicans.
So like, once our musicians got a hold of stay woke, dun, 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 and everybody's like, ooh.
Yeah.
And now it becomes an LGBTQ
Right.
connotation.
Yeah. Yeah.
And not only LGBTQ connotation, but now we break out the word critical race theory to deify, to demonize you learning about yourself. I think one of the things about Black psychology that is known, that our scholars knew, which is why we need to study our scholars, and they know that other people know about us, is that you can demonize a characteristic, or you can demonize a thing, and it will create in the psychology of the Black mind something that keeps us away from it. Right? Watermelons.
Right.
When you think watermelons, what you think?
Slavery, buffoonery, and the imagery that went, the little black child eating it out. Yeah.
Right? No.
One of the most nutritious fruits you can eat.
One of the most nutritious fruits that you can eat, way more hydrating the water. But it's not only that. The watermelon industry was cornered by Black people. And that industry was making people wealthy. And white people did not have a foothold in that industry at all. And so when the enslaved Africans got an opportunity to become their own farmers, even if they were sharecroppers, a lot of them had watermelon crops. And the watermelon is indigenous to Africa. It's one of the seeds that they brought over here with them. So now they're growing the crop that they know. They're growing the crop that's most nutritious, the most hydrating. They're becoming wealthy. So what do you do with that? You take an image that's going to demonize that in the minds of Black people, and it made us not even want to be associated. You got Black people today who won't eat watermelon,
right,
or chicken. I mean, and it is a psychology that is very well known amongst people who know psychology. And that's why we teach Amos Wilson at our school. That's why we teach Wade Nobles at our school. That's why we teach what's the other gentleman's name out of Tallahassee, Florida, the scholar out of Tallahassee, Florida, Naeem Akbar.
Yes.
Powerful psychologist. so that when someone comes and they say something or they put something in front of you or they're trying to run a psychological chess move on you, you can see the move.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you're just trying to make me not want that. Okay,
Right.
I see you.
Right.
I'm woke to that.
Right.
Right.
But you gotta have that type of mind.
You
to be able
have to have
identify.
that type of information.
Mhm. True.
You have to have that type of information.
Right. And that leads me perfectly into this next question. Well, which starts off with an observation. So in my research, I saw another interview that you were on. This was with our Haitian sister, Baina Bello.
Oh my gosh, she is power.
She is.
She is power. I felt like I should be sitting on the floor where her feet were.
I saw her one time and I felt the same. I'm like, look at this. Somebody I should have known when I was about 5 years old.
Yes.
Here I am. I was about 33 when I saw her. But I was like, yeah. But on this interview, you actually had your students in the background.
Yes.
And one of your students, who was a young man, he started explaining how Europe, I believe he quoted he was explaining how Europe wasn't really a continent.
Right.
Then a young sister, and it was almost like you were kind of like the point guard, you dished it to him, he explained how Europe's not a continent, he dished it back to you. Then you hit a little young sister and she starts breaking down the explanation of power according to Dr. Wade Nobles. And I'm like, I know these children they can't be over 9-10 years old.
Right.
I didn't learn anything about Dr. Nobles before I was 30-something. To see these children breaking down that type of concept and that type of information in such a digestible way to other children was phenomenal. So in your opinion, or in your vision rather, what does that type of knowledge base prepare the students at New Alkebulan for?
It prepares them to be builders. It prepares them to be leaders. It prepares them for power.
Yes.
Wade Noble says the definition of power is to define reality in such a way that other people behave as if that thing is real, but think that they are the ones who created the reality. Like that's what power is.
Right.
And that is what is happening to our children. Our entire reality has been redefined. And I'm gonna go into a subject that might get your podcast canceled, but I'm gonna try to talk about it in a way that's right. Good. So we have completely, and when I hate saying we, that was another thing that I hate doing, because Africans are not involved with a lot of these things.
Right.
But the West has completely redefined what a man is, what a woman is, what gender is, right? And you can go to a lot of liberal institutions and you will hear the students in those institutions arguing for that reality. Mm-hmm. Trans men are women and whatever it is. Right. They're arguing that reality is real. That's power. That's power. I'm not here to get into the conversation about what it is, what it ain't. Right. We can do that if you like. But but the point is to be able to give a definition of reality and then have that person argue it like they made it up. Mm-hmm. That's power. And so we teach our children Wade Nobles, Amos Wilson, Naeem Akbar, psychology from an African perspective, because there is a whole field of Black psychology that was created in this country by those people and a lot of other people to show us how this chess game is broken down. These are the moves that are being made, and this is what it looks like, right? And if we can spot the moves, we can counter them. But if we can't spot the moves, we can't counter them. We start making the same argument. Well, I guess that is real. It doesn't feel real, but I guess it's real. Is it real? Like you start questioning your own self. That's power.
No, that's
That's power.
true.
So we show them the power in that. We give them real world examples of that at their level of understanding, at being 4 or 5 up to 15 years old. Have children there from kindergarten to ninth grade now, but we can graduate through 12th grade. Um, but we have them doing the same thing. And one of the things that we do, and I heard this on your, it's not where I got it from because we've been doing it for years and other people do it as well. Instead of saying certain words, we'll say other things. So we don't say African Americans. We say American Africans or Caribbean Africans or Haitian Africans. And we broke it down just in terms of English language arts
Right.
and what the possessive is. Which one is the possessive? Which one has the other thing? Right? So our Haitian children are proud to be Haitian, but they know they're Haitian African. Our American children, they have a pride in their American heritage and history here, but they know that they're American Africans. And in doing so, things like that, creating that type of psychology, what it does, it says we're all African.
Right.
And if you can do that, if you can create a psychology in the mind of the Africans throughout the diaspora, that they are all African, and have them then move in that direction, that's power.
Something else that's powerful, and it's just making listening to you talk, especially about these children, is making me reflect on my own childhood. But like, you are teaching the youngest of minds to develop an appreciation for Dr. Wade Nobles, Dr. Amos Wilson, Dr. John Henry Clark, Naeem Akbar, and so many others who many of us as Black adults, African adults, we don't even know about them.
Right.
Definitely.
And
don't
I
have
didn't know about
appreciation.
them until
Right.
after I left college.
Right. See, and mine was pretty.
And I went to some pretty, notable colleges.
Yeah.
I didn't know about any of them until after I left.
I went to HBCU. I went to Tennessee State.
Oh, that's even worse.
Was it shout out TSU? Let me say this about TSU. Before I got there, this was maybe my second year there. That was the first time I heard the name Marcus Garvey. That was the first time I heard about Dr. John Henry Clark.
Oh yeah.
I had a few professors who were very entrenched in that, and they were convicted in the information. Going back, we were talking about earlier about your sheer conviction being a good teacher, being intentional and intentionally preparing yourself to liberate the minds of young African children. So I was saying that to say that there's so many of us who can't appreciate that type of vantage point when it comes to the reality of African people around this planet. So I gotta salute what you're doing as far as preparing those children and making them appreciate just even those names. Those names hold so much weight, but we don't even know about them. So
They do. And that's where the true African history is.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the true American African history is. That's where the true power in teaching our history is, right? It's in the works that those people have created. Baina Bello, it's in their work.
Yes.
The Marimba Anis, it's in their work, right? Also, another thing that we do with every project in the semester, we have a pyramid, and those pyramids are broken down into blocks. I don't know if you've seen that on any of the videos on YouTube, but there are 15 blocks in that pyramid, and on the front facing of the block is a face. It's only a face. It doesn't have a name. It doesn't have any words. It's just a face. And so every child has to know all of those people face by face. And then on the other side, there's a quote. And you have to know who that is simply by what was said on that quote. And then they have, if they've written a book or if they have a patent or if they've created something, their creation is on the other side, but their name has been taken off. And they have to know who that person is just by identifying the picture, the cover of their book or their patent that they have, or like their work. They have to be identified by, so they have to be identified by their face. They have to be identified by their teachings. They have to be identified by their works. And then there are parables on the other side that speak to the lesson. So they have to be identified by their lesson. And so we'll mix the pages up around the boxes, and there are all types of games that we play with the pyramid. They roll them like dice. They there are all types of games that they play throughout the semester. So by the end of the semester, they know 15 substantial people just by seeing their face. And they know their work, and they've read excerpts of that work, because the true freeing, history, the true African history is in those works. It's not in the books that are being banned by DeSantis. It's in the books that have never been entered into the school system ever. Right? And Mwalimu Baruti, but those are our scholars. Those are the people that our children need to be learning about, and they can learn about them at the level that they're at, starting at 3 and 4 and 5 years old.
Mm-hmm. Right. And I wasn't even gonna ask this, but it's on my heart. Like sometimes I try to check myself and make sure I'm not being too cynical, but a lot of the times I look at our response to the things that are most important versus the things that are of least importance.
Mm-hmm.
And I see us going in a grave direction. And oftentimes I find myself wrestling with the notion of it's gonna take something detrimental to happen to us before we can appreciate the things that are necessary. What I wanna know is, especially for our viewers and for our people there in Florida, what is it gonna take for Black people, African people, to appreciate institutions like the one that you've built? And I mean, not just appreciate it in the sense like, oh, this sister doing a good job. I mean, appreciate it in the sense of, hey, we gotta keep these doors open. What will it take, in your estimation, for us to truly appreciate an endeavor like that?
So you can look at it from one side and you can look at it from the other side, right? So the one side is the devastation and the possibility of the doors closing and it just not existing anymore, right? And like, oh, DeSantis is taking. You see how people rallying around, fighting against the something being taken away. Mm-hmm. So that fear of loss, that could be one of the things that gets us to do that, and we can try to rally our people around a fear of loss. Because what happened with our school is I didn't open the school with public funds or
I was going to ask you that.
Anything like that. I didn't open the school with donations from the community. Nothing like that. Those public schools that I was working in, I went to my mom. I told her what happened to me in college. Mm-hmm. And I told her what was told to me. Yeah, I told you I had a praying grandma. Mm-hmm. I had a praying mama too. And when I told her what happened to me, she took that very seriously as I took it. And I said, but I don't know how to do it, and I don't have the money to do it. She said, well, I can't tell you how to do it because you've always been way better at me than me at that type of stuff. But what I can do is come here, live here. You don't have to pay any rent. We pay off your car. You have no bills. Your son, bring him here. We'll take care of him together. And every dime that you make at a public school system, put it to the side. And the school is going to pay you to build a school. Work, get your salary, spend the minimum that you can, put the rest of it away, and build a school with your money. That's what I did. I lived skinny. I lived on nothing. I slept in my mom's house, and my baby was there with me. I drove an old Nissan that was paid off, still a stick shift. I didn't go out. I didn't buy things. I had a $30,000 a year job, and I saved at least 20 of it every year. And in 2013, when it was time to open a school, I took it was either $60,000 or $80,000 that I had saved, and I leased a building.
You built a school with your own money.
It took a minute to do it though, right? It wasn't like something that I just, went and got the money. You know what I'm saying? I worked. I worked at the school. I made $30,000. I saved 20, and another 20, and a 10 here and a 15 there. And then when I got the curriculum right, when I got the community members together, um, I had the savings and I leased the building.
All I can think about is I went and spoke at a school this morning, and a few of the kids said what they wanted to be when they grew up was a teacher. But hearing you talk about that type of to deploy that type of strategy, and to be blessed to have a mother like you have, but to be so disciplined as to live skinny and put this aside, all for a cause that many won't appreciate. That's next level selflessness. You know what I'm saying?
I cried a lot.
I'm finna cry right now.
And like my first teaching job, I cried every day. I came home, Mama, these children don't want to learn. They just they want to fight me, Mom.
Right.
Because I taught at a high school and I'm little,
Right.
and I look like them, and
Yeah.
I'm teaching economics. They didn't want to learn it. They didn't, charts, and she was like, look. After a while, she's like, you can't cry every day. You have to figure it out. Like, if this is what you're going to do, you're going to have to figure it out, right? So if this was your own school and the children want to learn, what would you do? Like, you're learning all these models and all this stuff. Which one works? And I was like, oh, okay, that is what I'm doing, right? So I put the economics book to the side. I printed out ledgers. Remember when you had a checkbook with a ledger?
Yeah.
So I took my checkbook, my ledger, and I made photocopies of my ledger for every child. I made them checks with their name on it, and they got a checkbook. And then they got I made a whole project. So I was like, okay, it's the doing, it's the building, it's the making, it's the creating that I think is going to work for our children, right? So I went in and I tossed the econ book to the side and I said, okay, here's your book. And I gave everybody a checkbook and I gave everybody a ledger. And then I gave everybody a sheet that was a pay stub for their job. And their job was based on the grades that they had been making in class so far. So their salary, if they had been making A's, they had a high salary job. If they weren't making A's, they had a low salary job. And they were like, hold on, wait a minute, she's making more than me. And I said, okay, this is how this class is going to go. Every day, I'm going to come in here. I'm going to try to break you. But if you can pass the class, if you can go the whole year and you have $1 left, you get an A in the class. $1. But no, I'm gonna try to take it every day. Every Friday is payday, but you gotta be here in order to be paid. And they had to keep their balance in their ledger. And so all of the lessons in the econ book, of course, went into what we were learning in class. They got, paid for their homework, and they brought it back. They could upgrade their job. Now, if their grade went up, they could apply for another job. They could interview for another job in front of the class. The class got to say whether or not they got promoted. So they were doing all of this to keep raising them up, because also every day we had either a grab bag or a wheel that they had to spin or grab something out of. And it's like, oh, you had a baby. Your expenses go up. Your income comes down. Oh, you had a flat tire. I'll take I'll take $250 because you had to call a tow truck and you had to get 4 new tires. So it was like all these type of life things. So I went from children who were skipping class every day and wanted to fight me to children who were skipping their other classes to come to my class so that they could get overtime.
Yeah.
Right? So I was like, okay. And it's not that it was fun, but the point was not make it fun. The point was create the creators. Give them something to build. Give them something to build. Give them something to work towards. And make it high stakes, but also easy at the same time. right? So $1 balance, you get an A in the class. And like I said, I had young men approach me 10 years later in the grocery store. Miss Irvin, you remember me? You remember me from Augusta? You remember me? Yes, I remember you. You was a whole knucklehead. He's like, but now I am, and thank you for, so it's just really finding out what works for our children. And a part of that is tasking them with the creation of things. We are creators. That's who we are.
Right.
And then nurture that. Give them a way to do that where they can see success. Say, we're going to build an electric car. Mama Cheryl, you know how to build a car? I have never built a car before. But we're going to build one. We're going to build one that drives, and we're going to drive it inside the school. And say that like it's true, and then make it happen.
Right. The name of the show is Top 5 Podcast.
Yes.
Top 5, Black Top 5. And I want to know, who are your top 5 Black influential people? It could be personal, it can be scholars, it could be leaders, you can mix them up. But who are the top Black top 5 people in your life, dead or alive, that you draw inspiration from on the daily?
Harriet Tubman. These are people who are not related to me. I definitely have people who are related to me.
Right.
But Harriet is, I think I'm not a descendant. I don't know. Right. I don't know. But I feel a kinship to her. She used to have spells and passing out. I've had my own bouts with narcolepsy where I just pass out, but I come to with the most like amazing things that I have to do. It's just a lot of the ways that we are similar. So Harriet Tubman, Amos Wilson, the GOAT. I cannot even say anything more than that. Amos Wilson, Mwalimu Baruti. He has one of the first African Center School right here in Atlanta. Right. Amazing, him and his wife. Yeah. Mwalimu Baruti. Toni Morrison. The eloquence, the way she could look in the face of anybody with pride and control, but also reading you up and down and like, oh no. And she would be in interviews with white people and read them like, how dare you? But it's like, ooh, do that again. I want that level of poise. Yeah. You know what I mean? I don't always have it. I want that level of poise. And the fifth one, my grandmother. My grandmother had 13 children. 6 boys, 6 girls. I think 7 girls. One of them didn't make it. 13 children. So by the time I came around, I can't even count the grandchildren. But we used to sleep on pallets on the floor because after we come home from school, everybody was delivered to my grandmother. Yeah. My grandmother would wake up at 4:00 in the morning. My grandfather was a brick mason. And so he taught his boys how to build things. And he would have a truck in front of the house and all the men in the neighborhood would come and get on the back of the truck. My grandmother had made coffee for all the men. She would cook grits in this pot like I don't even know how she got it on the stove because she's a little lady, right? Little lady. So they had grits and chicken and fish and homemade biscuits and homemade coffee. And they're all coming into this little house. And they all get breakfast. They all get a bag lunch. All the children come over. And now she's doing the same thing for the children. And when the men get off the truck and they come back, now they got pork chop sandwiches to take home. Like, how did you mother everybody? As small as you are, as meek, as never raised her voice. Don't let me tell you, granddaddy. That was about the the harshest thing that she could say, right? Just meek. But she wanted to be a teacher when she was little. And I asked her one day, like, you take care of everybody. You take care of everybody's babies. You take care of everybody's husbands. You take care of the whole neighborhood. Like, crackheads could come through the door and you give them that same bag of food that you gave the man who got on that bus. Like, how you do it? She said she wanted to be a teacher when she was little, but she had to leave school after second grade to go pick cotton. So yeah.
And while you sit there, I'm just thinking. I remember you talked about your grandfather being a brick mason. Your grandmother wanted to be a teacher. You created a school where you create creators, and you've encompassed both of them
Yeah.
in building like your grandfather,
And teaching like my grandma.
teaching beyond her wildest dreams
Yeah.
for a nation of people. That's phenomenal. It is my most sincere desire that our people appreciate your efforts in what you've built for us and what you've built for the future of African people. And I want us to appreciate it in a way to make sure that these doors stay open. Right now you have a fundraiser out.
Yeah.
To keep the doors open. For all the viewers, where do they need to go to contribute to maintaining the school? Because see, in all honesty, this is bigger than just Lauderhill, Florida.
Yes.
We need this all over the world.
So here's the thing. Second download that I got. First download that I got in my moment of emotional frenzy, you're going to build a school, right? As I'm going through the years of trying to do it, right? You know, some people who are woken up at 3:00 in the morning every morning, and that's me, right? So the second download that I got, that it's not a school, it's a school of thought, and it's a system of schooling, right? So the intention was never for it to be one location. The intention is that the curriculum that we have is packaged in such a way that now homeschoolers can access it and build along with us, and that the model can be in cities throughout the diaspora. So we have children building for us throughout the diaspora, learning to be creator minded so that when they build in service of. You can create, you must create, you should create, and you must create in service of African people, right? So the idea is to have these schools throughout the diaspora, and with this model that the children are physically making boats, cars, homes, pipelines to success for themselves. So when I was talking about a fear of loss, this year I got to the point where I couldn't feed it myself. I've never, since we started in 2013, now it's 2023, in the 10 years, I started paying myself $20,000 2 years ago. I never took a penny prior to that. And that $20,000 was only so I could pay for my son's college.
Wow.
I was fortunate again to have people in my life who just like, you can live here.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't have to, pay rent or same car.
Right. Right.
Pay it off.
That's a blessing. Really.
But I got to the point where I couldn't feed it myself. I fed it myself from the beginning by working at other jobs, Then I learned the credit system and how to build business credit. I was telling you about that earlier. How to get credit lines, and those types of things. Did that, maxed that out. But this year it's different. This year, all of our students are scholarship students in the state of Florida. One of the good things, and I say good, not that because it was done for us, but it's something that we can use, right? Ron DeSantis and the right have created a voucher. Well, the voucher system was created before him, but he opened up the voucher system, right? So if you want to take your child out of the public school system, they will give you between $7,000 and $10,000 to send them to any private school that you like.
Oh,
Yeah. And it used to be income based, for low income families. But what Ron DeSantis did just maybe 4 months ago, 6 months ago, back in May, he removed the income requirement. So now people of any income can remove their children from the public school system and get that money and take them to private schools, or have a micro school, if you will, and take the money to use that. Or you can homeschool. Homeschoolers can get the same money now, right? Did he do that for Black people? No. He did that for conservatives. We'll use the word conservatives, who want to sequester their children. It was legislative white flight, I believe. I'm gonna just say it like that.
good
It was legislative white flight. Just like they can gentrify our history, they run from the things that they don't like, and then they shoveled the resources in that area for them to use, right? So I do believe it was legislative white flight. But here's the thing: we can create the private schools that get the same money.
Right.
And if you're a homeschooler, you can get the same money. I've walked several homeschool parents through getting that money for their children.
Okay.
And when I was, homeschooling my child or other people home, you just paying out of pocket. You want them to have a certain curriculum. You want them to have a certain experience. You just pay for it.
Right.
Now you can get $10,000 from the state of Florida. And you should. Why shouldn't you? Because you're paying into the tax system for education anyway.
Right.
What happened this year, right? 4 to 6 months ago, DeSantis opens that up for people of all income brackets and for homeschoolers. All of our children are scholarship children at this point. There is a legislative disagreement between the left and the right as to like, oh, you're taking funds away from the public school, and so the funds get held up and they're not being released to the private schools. So all of the income that comes, I used to charge parents out of pocket, but for the last 3 years, we've been taking in scholarship students. First 7 years, we just pay for it. The last 3 years, scholarship students. But now the money's being held up with this legislative argument because of the changes in the system. And we don't have the money. I have amazing teachers who are like, we're riding with you. This is going to stay open. I have amazing parents. They're like, we're riding with you. This is going to stay open. And now we need, for the first time, an amazing community that helps to do the same. And on our website, we have a donate tab where people can go and donate to the most immediate needs of the school, right? The teacher salaries, the children's breakfast. I still cook breakfast for children every morning. And just keeping the doors open. The lease, until this thing with the state of Florida is worked out legislatively. But that's not the end goal. The end goal is actually, like I said, to take our model, and for people who want it in other places, particularly and especially in voucher states. Let's build our own schools. I know how to do it now. I didn't know how to do it before, but I know how to do it now. And I know how to do it from a very fundamental level, from a very grassroots level, from getting the funding to hiring teachers, to acquiring students, to acquiring buildings, to zoning. All of the lessons that I have learned. I don't want to just open a school and have it be the greatest African-centered school in the nation. I want every area that wants an African-centered school and that has 7 people who want to partner in making that school happen, I want them to have an African-centered school, and I can show them how to do it.
Yes.
That's the goal. But if you would like to help us to keep going through this year, because I am just like that make it happen person, but I have reached a point. I have reached a point where I can't feed it, you know? And we are asking for the community. We have been asking for donations for a month now. And there is a donate button tab on our website, newalkebalonschool.com, and /donate, or you'll see the donate tab when you go there.
So newalkebalonschool.com.
Yeah.
And if
And
they
the
don't
Cash App is $New Alkebalon.
$New Alkebalon. So Cash App, $New Alkebalon. The website is say the website one more time.
New NEW.
Yes.
Alkebalon, ALKEBULAN school.com.
Great. We have to. We need this like we need water and air. We globally, the global African community needs this. I want to thank you for coming all the way from Florida, South Florida, not the part up by Georgia line. You came from South Florida all the way here to Atlanta to talk to me about this. This was an enriching and powerful conversation. I learned a lot, and the need for what you're doing is all the more real now, and I'm hoping our viewers understand that. So make sure, one more time, can you just say it one more time, the website?
newalkebalonschool.com. newalkebalonschool.com. You can also go to africancenterschool.com. It'll take you to the website. Okay. Also, africancenterschool.com points you to the same website.
And we're gonna have the link in the description too. So I want to make sure everybody knows how to do this. Well, Sister Cheryl, I want to thank you again for coming and being my esteemed guest today on Black Top 5. Real quick, shout out your social media real quick. It'll be in the link too.
So everything is New Alkebalon. And on YouTube, we're New Alkebalon. Instagram @New Alkebalon. Education, Facebook, New Alkebalon. Everything is New Alkebalon or New Alkebalon Education. All of our social media is New Alkebalon or New Alkebalon Education.
Thank you.
Yes.
We got to support. Thank you again. This has been another episode. We appreciate you, and we'll see y'all next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.